It's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, but I've just come from the yacht club where I've been fortunate enough to be doing a live commentary of the race with Sir Jackie Stewart. A bit sweaty, so excuse that. Straight into the room to do this video for you guys. And I've got to say, Sir Jackie, and well, collectively, we were just astonished. A, that more drivers didn't start the race on intermediates because it was pretty clear the track was going to have a dry groove pretty quickly. B, that so many drivers stayed out on wets for so long. And C, that more drivers didn't think about going straight from wets to slicks, which is basically based on point B as well. It was absolutely astonishing to see it. And I think it comes under the heading of Formula One is in this mode now of the conservative, logical option, don't want to be seen to be making the wrong move, don't want to make any mistakes, so we'll do the comfortable middle road. And we saw that with a lot. We saw that basically with Charles Leclerc, and we saw that basically with Max Verstappen. These are two of the most talented drivers in the history of the sport, let alone in Formula One. You mean these guys can't drive in the wet on intermediates when it's almost on a crossover point, or maybe it's still on the wet side? You think they can't drive on intermediates for a few laps? And when the track's got a line, a bit of a dry line, you think they can't drive on slicks? I mean, what were they doing? They were staying a long time out on wets, then they went to intermediates, and then 3 laps into the intermediate run, they would come in and have to do a stack pit stop and go onto slicks. It was absolutely astonishing how Charles Leclerc, having done all that work yesterday and got an amazing pole by 0.3 of a second for Ferrari, and leading the race. The first corner drama was taken away because it was a safety car start in the wet. They're on wet tyres. That's taken away. The drama, any drama of getting off the line, is taken away from him. He's leading the race. He's got everything there. And he doesn't think, or the team doesn't think, we'll go straight to slicks. Why wouldn't they have thought that? Why wouldn't they have thought, this guy is as talented as he is. We can do this. Let's make it happen. And I say that, A, because we were saying that, and B, because there was Carlos Sainz saying that as well, and saying to his engineers, no, forget about the intermediates, go straight to slicks. It was an obvious thing. And I'm still absolutely dumbstruck, actually, as to why they didn't do that on the Leclerc car, or why Charles didn't do that. I mean, there's nothing worse than going on intermediates for 5 or 6 laps, whatever it was, and then having to come in on a stack pit stop behind your teammate and go on to slicks then when he's just making his first stop. I mean, that was just unbelievable to me, particularly after the pole that Charles got. And just the same for Max. You know, Max had everything to gain in that race. He's got that amazing talent. Why wouldn't Red Bull have been thinking from early on, get him onto slicks as soon as possible? This is going to be one of those races. Get him onto slicks. Why wouldn't they have been doing that? Instead of which, he went down the absolute middle road of, yeah, we'll run the wets for as long as we can, then we'll run the intermediate. Oh, made a mistake the intermediates, gone to slick. You know, at least Sergio Perez didn't spend as long as those guys on the wets, and that was the key to Sergio's win. That's how he got the track position, indeed, even over Carlos Sainz, because he came in, he did 2 laps fewer on the wet tyre, which meant he had slightly longer on, and that was difficult. When he went straight to the intermediate, it was difficult. The car wasn't easy to drive, but he lived with it for a lap or 2. And then when the others were coming in, he was starting to really get into the groove on the intermediate, putting in some really good laps, and then came in under his own time, in his own bubble, to come in exactly when he wanted to go to slicks. And he was leading the race. Carlos Sainz did a very good job as well. I think he was unlucky not to have held the lead. I think that was very, very close between Sergio and Carlos as to who was going to get that track position. It was difficult to evaluate it because they did different things. Carlos went straight, as he should have done, and correctly did, straight from wets to slicks, whereas Sergio went to that run on the intermediates. Very, very closely run thing, based on Sergio using a much smaller window for the wet tyre. And Carlos did the right thing. You know, he enforced the issue with the engineer, said, no, I want to go straight to slicks, and got onto the slicks. And that was a really good P2 for Carlos Sainz. I mean, it was going to be a P1 if Sergio made any sort of mistake, if any drama had happened, but it was a good P2 anyway, beating Charles Leclerc, who was on the pole and the quicker of the 2 Ferrari drivers all weekend, you could argue. And as for Max, same thing. You know, where was Max in that race? He should have been the guy that either started on intermediates and then went straight to slicks, or he should have been the guy that got off the wets very quickly, did a reasonably long stint on the intermediates, and then got onto the slick tyre. As it was, as I say, he just went down the middle, and he was basically in no position to make up track position at any time. Completely bizarre. And a big thumbs up to the drivers that did exactly the same thing as Carlos Sainz, to start on the wet tyre, but then forget about the intermediate and go straight to the slicks. Well, Carlos, obviously, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Valtteri Bottas and Esteban Ocon, both Alpines, interestingly, got it absolutely right in terms of the strategy today. You know, in fairness to Lewis, his tyre stops mirrored those, but within a lap, of Sergio Perez. So you could argue that he used the winning strategy in that race. The difference was, of course, he was in the midfield. So running the sort of strategy that Sergio had was not going to achieve anything at all. He needed to do something radical. He needed either to start on intermediates or he needed to run the wet much longer and go straight to slicks. That was the only way he was going to do anything from the midfield. And I don't know why they didn't do that with Lewis either. George did it, but Lewis didn't. And that's, to me, tyre calls like that are the responsibility of the driver. He's the guy out there, he can feel it. And as we saw with Carlos Sainz, he was absolutely right. He was forcing the issue with the engineers, saying, no, forget about the intermediate, I want to go straight to slicks. And they did that. And you imagine how Carlos felt when he drove in and he knew that Charles was coming in to do a stack pit stop behind him. He would have felt, yes. Speaking of saying yes, Sergio Perez, getting back to Sergio. I mean, the race was stopped, obviously, when Mick Schumacher had that very strange lose in the middle of the swimming pool. Looked like something broke, looked like a tyre or something. I don't know what it was, but it's very weird to have got as far as he did through the S's there. And suddenly, with the car not even on the edge of the road, suddenly in the middle of the corner just to do that. So we'll see what happened there. But again, big shunt, but the Dallara chassis again looking pretty good, even though the gearbox came off the back of the engine. I hadn't seen that for a long time. But yeah, good to see Mick getting out unharmed from that big shunt. But anyway, that brought out the red flag because they had to repair the barriers. And then, of course, it was putting everybody onto different slicks, new sets of slick tyres, because you're allowed to change tyres during the red flag period. It was always going to be interesting to see who went for the medium, who went for the hard. And again, you have to wonder why, if it was 50-50, they didn't split their options in some of these teams. But they didn't. Both Ferraris were on hard, both Red Bulls were on medium. And I think that showed the lack of knowledge of what those tyres were going to do this far with that much of the race to run, because nobody did any long running really on Friday to speak of. Lewis did a bit, but it was sort of 5-6 laps at the most. Nobody did anything more than that. Certainly Ferrari never ran fuel. Max didn't do much fuel running either. So nobody knew how these medium tyres were going to last over the set distance that remained. Equally, nobody really knew what the hard tyre was going to do either. So it was interesting to see Ferrari and Red Bull going to the opposite extremes of the two options. I suspect when the covers came off and Ferrari saw both Red Bulls on medium, I suspect their collective hearts sank, because if Red Bull are thinking the medium's going to do this, then the medium's going to do it. And of course then it was Sergio Perez leading Carlos Sainz, Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. It was a question, would he make any mistakes? Would any of them make any mistakes? Or would it be one of these Monaco things? But it was a difference. It wasn't one of these Monaco things because they were on different tyre compounds. So it was always tense. It was always intriguing to see what was going to happen. And it was worsened, of course, as they went down into Mirabeau for the first lap. And Sergio locked up the left front into Mirabeau. You would imagine that the medium tyre would be slightly warmer than the hard, that it would find temperature a little bit quicker than the hard that was on the two Ferraris. But it was Sergio that locked up the left front. And that, of course, put a flat spot on the tyre. And then it was a question of, can he drive around slowly enough to look after the tyres and the graining and everything else and the flat spot and still win the race? And he did. He really did it. It was amazing. I was saying yesterday how good Sergio is with his the way he applies power and load to the loaded rear. And it was fabulous to see him doing that. I mean, obviously, on any right-hander where the left front was being punished, he had to take it really easy. And that included, obviously, Mirabeau, which is why everybody stacked up behind him going into the hairpin for lap after lap after lap. And also the Rascasse section, which is why Carlos Sainz was also pretty near him as they came out of Rascasse every lap. But going through anything else, particularly out of the tunnel, breaking into the chicane, and then to back, swimming pool, Casino Square, absolutely fabulous. Sergio just looked completely at one in the car, total harmony with what he was doing, totally confident. Was he looking in the mirrors? Of course he wasn't looking in the mirrors. Why would he? I don't even know if he was thinking about all the people in, whatever big main square there is in Mexico City where they would have been watching this race on a big screen. Imagine at the restart, actually, when they had that pause, imagine what would have been going on with Mexico when the red flag came out. You knew it was going to be a 20-minute break. And Sergio Perez was leading the Monaco Grand Prix. Can you imagine what that would have been like in Mexico City? And what that means for Mexico and Central America and South America for Formula One there. It is absolutely huge. And Sergio, I can't really put more words together to describe the quality of his win other than what I said yesterday. This was when he maximised everything that he does so well with the back of the car to make up for the problem that he was having with that left front. And, there's no way Carlos could really do anything. He could flash around in his mirrors, bit of red, but he was never going to pass him unless Sergio did something and ran wide or kissed a barrier or did something like that. And that never happened. So bearing in mind the state his car was in yesterday, what a win for Sergio Perez. And congratulations to Red Bull. What a driver, what a great guy to have in the other car alongside Max Verstappen. On a weekend when Max was as quick, maybe a little bit slower than Sergio all weekend. As I said yesterday, if Max finishes third, he'll write this off as quite a good weekend where he got some points, and particularly if he finished ahead of Charles Leclerc, which he did. Very good drive by Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, I thought. Very good rhythm, good aggression, but above all, that decision to push, to go straight to slicks was a decision, well, what can I say, that his father would have been very proud of and would have enjoyed, because that was all about touch and feel, conditions, sliding the car. Can I do it? Yes, I can. And that was absolutely in the Sainz family tradition. As for Charles Leclerc, got to feel sorry for Charles because there he was on the point of making history. He could win this Monaco Grand Prix, this fabulous Ferrari F175 racing car. He's on the pole. He's leading the race even, and he didn't force the issue. And they put him on intermediates when they should have put him onto slicks. And it was just ridiculous, really. I find that absolutely heartbreaking, actually, that Charles' win went there and all he did was finish fourth. And while the podium music was playing and Sergio was in tears, rightfully so, as the Mexican anthem was playing, Charles would have been in the Ferrari garage, taking his helmet off, wondering what happened. And that's the two extremes of sport, isn't it? But he'll be okay. He'll come back and he'll be the same guy. He's gone through a lot worse, Charles Leclerc, but this is a big loss for him. Amazing drive by George Russell. Fabulous drive again by George Russell in the Mercedes. He's just getting better and better and better. And you just got to see every time he goes out, there's a result smelling there. As good as the car can be, George is going to bring it home. And I was thinking this morning that really, if you look back at Spain and Mercedes' performance in Spain, it was really the first time they had a real race this year and could think about doing anything with the car and making it happen, particularly on Lewis's afternoon. He just went out and thrashed the car basically, and it delivered, and it was great. And I think George had that sort of race today. He was kind of on the limit the whole way, got the maximum out of the car. Great call, great confidence in himself and the car to go from wets to slicks, as he should have, and as Lewis should have. And what can I say? Fabulous result.